funny. People always be like, don't forget about the little people. It's like, why do they refer themselves as little anyway, you know? Why don't you just get big with me? Feel me? They can see it in my eyes.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of John's Entitled Podcast, a partner of Mosh Pit Nation. This week's guest is the returning Fallon Bowman. Fallon and I are continuing our Deftones discography discussion. We had previously done this episode, and unfortunately, as you heard and have heard a couple of times since this happened, this was one of the episodes that got corrupted or whatever, and I basically lost the file. So instead of kind of scrapping it or doing a half-ass thing, we just took the time, and we ended up doing a whole nother episode where we just went through and redid it. And the interesting thing about us doing this one is typically we do a lot of note taking and all that kind of stuff, and you can hear us kind of going track by track and saying what we have written down previously about these songs and this record as a whole. And I've done a couple of these podcasts where something happens and I have to go back and redo it with somebody. And what I typically try to do when that has happened is to not say the exact same things, not ask the same questions or so forth, because I think that's a little disingenuous, especially when I know the answer. It's hard to be like, oh, I didn't know that, when I fucking knew that that's what was coming. So with this one, I honestly hadn't listened to the record since we last did the conversation about a month prior to this one, and I didn't write anything down. This is all literally off the top of my head. I've listened to this album enough that I was like, if I can't talk about it in any kind of detail and still have the same things that I typically would end up saying, then, you know, perhaps it's not really how I actually feel about a song, and I'm letting something else influence my opinions at that particular point in time. So everything you're hearing is literally off the top of my head. And some of the things I actually said even surprised me, because as I was kind of saying them, I was like, wow, I didn't know I felt this way. So I might actually kind of do that a little bit more when we do some of these, when we have these last two records to go through. And it'd be interesting to see if I feel the same way. Like, I should take notes and then maybe just do it off the cuff and then compare my notes when I'm editing the episode. I don't know. But yeah, so it was really fun to do this chat. At this point, the nice thing about doing this chat now was the Kittie reunion happened. So we were able to kickstart this episode with, a handful of minutes about the Kittie reunion, Fallon getting to play with the rest of the ladies in Kittie, the crowd reception, and of course, obviously talking about playing the ESP Stephen Carpenter model and so forth. But by all accounts, all the videos and pictures I saw, it looked like it was a really great time, and I know I wish I could have gone. Sadly, I didn't have a passport at the time, but now that I do, if there's another Kittie show, I can make our way over and go see it myself. Actually, thinking that's going to be one of the places maybe we go sometime this year, my wife and I, so perhaps if we go somewhere over to Canada, Toronto area, whatever, and Fallon's not busy, maybe we can actually meet up and do one of these, like a sit-down. That would be kind of fun. I haven't done many sit-downs, but I'm kind of gearing up and getting ready to go to LA and go do one with James Hart of 18 Visions and talk cosmetology and all that kind of stuff. So I've been really thinking about sit-down conversations a lot more, and I think I want to try to do more of those. Not saying that I'm not sitting down with the people I'm talking to over Skype or whatever, but I think some personal interactions would be more fun. Another fun thing that happened as a result of this is I have made mention of Bad Rabbits quite a bit on this podcast, especially when talking about Deftones. I always talk about the Deftones cover they do of Sex Tape off of this record, and it's one of my favorite covers. I love covers as a whole. Sadly, I was really upset when I heard the Talk To Me podcast and they do a cover of the week, but apparently they are retiring that. So maybe I should pick up that stick and run with it and start doing interesting cover songs that I have loved, because interestingly enough, as much as Josh has played really great covers and covers that I've been aware of, and some that I'm not, given the fact that I'm not a huge Kiss fan, so a lot of the Kiss covers that bands have done are out of my realm of knowledge, I definitely know that there's probably a good 15 to 20 that whenever I show anyone these covers, they're always like, I had no fucking clue that this existed. And these are, some are really popular bands that a lot of people like, and even they're not aware of these covers. So, yeah, maybe I will kind of start integrating that a little bit more as I see fit, maybe, or just something fun. Like if I have a shorter episode, maybe I'll throw in like a cover that I really enjoy. So if you're listening to this, sorry you decided not to do that anymore, but let's consider this the yours is, ours is, final thoughts and additional thoughts with the covers. That's a small joke that maybe only a handful of people will get. If you listen to a few different podcasts that I just sort of mentioned there, that's really meta. But yeah, so also want to say, speaking of Toomey, he reached out to me after I posted my episode with Steve Evans and said that he really enjoyed the conversation. And, it means a lot coming from another podcaster who does this and, that sends, the texts or whatever, or Facebook messages and so forth, and talks about how he enjoys an episode or whatever. I know producers and production people and some of the behind the scenes people that I have on here aren't necessarily everyone's cup of tea and probably aren't going to be people that everyone just readily knows by name, but I think that they have equally as interesting stories as everybody else does that's more in the limelight of sorts. So I got a lot of good feedback actually on that episode through a couple of different people who found it and listened to it, and it's always great to hear. I was having a conversation today actually with Derek Williams that was on a couple of weeks ago, and we were just kind of talking different like numbers as far as content creators and so forth, and it just gets interesting when you kind of get not lost, but when you think of things like that, like, oh, for the year I've had I thought he had I got really jealous. I thought he had about 1,200 listens this year, and I was like, holy shit, dude, like, good on you. I'm really jealous. I have about half of that. And I really, like, he told me that wasn't necessarily the case, but it's interesting when you kind of get lost in some of these things. Like, they just become numbers and things like that. But what's interesting is to think in this first full year of doing this podcast, I think collectively, between YouTube, between everything, I mean, I think I'm probably at around, close to like 10,000 listens or whatever on everything, and fucking blows my mind, man. Like, I don't have 10,000 friends, and even if I did, like, holy shit, can you really be friends with that many people? So the fact that anyone, like I said, takes the time to listen to this, gets any kind of enjoyment out of this, really means a lot to me. But where I was going with that was, I've talked about Bad Rabbits quite a bit on these Deftones chats, and even in this episode, I know I bring it up, and I bring up the cover of Sex Tape, their cover of Michael Jackson's Human Nature, and their cover of Smashing Pumpkins' 1979. And if you haven't seen those or checked them out on YouTube, please go check them out. Then go down the rabbit hole, no pun intended, of Bad Rabbits music. They have been around for probably longer than you would think, and they are fucking great. And on top of that, they came from a band. The whole reason I ever knew who this band was outside of the covers was their drummer was in a band called Irrepress. And I know I've talked about this on the podcast too, where they played a house show here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and blew me away. So go check out that band too. I don't know if they're ever going to do anything at this point with Bad Rabbits being as popular as they are. But the interesting thing was I put out a tweet. If you follow me on Twitter, John's Untitled Pod, I put the link to the Sex Tape cover. And seemingly a lot of people didn't even know about it. Some people shared it, so on and so forth, which is great. That's the whole point of sharing music, is to get people to be aware of something maybe they weren't and fall in love with it, which is also a Bad Rabbit song. But the thing is I tweeted them, included them in all the things I was posting, because you got to give credit to where it's due. And so I emailed the band, and I will have Sheil, their drummer, the drummer from Irrepress, on the podcast early in the next year. The intro music that you hear, if you don't know who it is, even though I put the artist in the show notes, Shayhawk. We had a conversation, first time actually talking to each other over a phone and hearing each other's voices, or more so mine. So we're gonna link up probably in the next month and a half or so. I kind of, even though the holidays have been here, I've been on my grind. I'm trying to get really great guests, trying to diversify and get different people from other genres that aren't necessarily things I'm super into or know a lot about, but I realize that's kind of how you grow as a person, is kind of stepping out of your comfort zone and learning things about somebody else in a different subgenre or a culture or whatever, and that's how you get more well-rounded. So I think it's a good thing for me in this new year with this podcast to reach out to different people as well as people I like and admire and get them on and talk about their experiences and just kind of learn from everybody. So with all of that being said, this is my chat with Fallon Bowman. Talk to you in the outro.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good.
Good. I've been sitting here listening to the CD like 3 times, and it is legitimately perfection from beginning to end. And this time, I listened to my like iTunes version. So we can talk about the bonus tracks if you want.
We got my wife and I just got a new car like a couple of weeks ago, so it has Sirius in it for the first like couple of months for free, and so we've been getting lost on like their basically new metal-ish kind of channel where it's like hits of the 90s and 2000s, and you're like as we were coming home it was like Systematic and like Head PE and a bunch of stuff like that, so kind of got lost in that.
Yeah, I bet.
So I've been real bad lately, because yesterday I did a chat with Steve Ebbets, the producer, who's, I don't know if you're familiar with him at all, but he has worked with like just a shitload of bands. Like, has worked with Ross Robinson on like a Cure record, worked with Ross Robinson on a Limp Bizkit record that pretty much no one ever remembers ever existing, and has done stuff with like all of the Dillinger Escape Plan records and stuff like that. So I've been like so immersed in his like catalog for the last like couple of weeks that like leading up to this I was like, all right, Diamond Eyes, all right, and I thought I had my notes that I could just piggyback off of from last time, but I forgot I had them in my phone and then transferred them to my computer, which then took a shit on me. So as I was coming home and was like, oh, it'll be fine, I can just use those notes, and I was like, those notes that existed before my computer crashed and I don't have. So I think I'm gonna do a thing where I probably will just sort of like play the first couple of seconds from my phone of the song so I can kind of remind myself. But I've listened to this record so much that I'll probably have you go first just so I can kind of remember. But it's like Diamond Eyes. It's like, okay, like punishing intro, it lines really well with the drums, very akin to like Hole in the Earth. Like, I can't remember some of the things I've been saying with this the last time, so it should go pretty easy. And it's, it's not like it's a terrible record, so it's not gonna be like, oh my god, I had to listen to this record again.
Like the way I feel about self-titled. Sorry.
It's funny, a friend of mine actually texted me out of the blue and he was like, what are you talking about? Hexagram is so great. And I was like, what? I was like, did we have a conversation that like I don't remember us leaving off on? And he was like, no, I'm listening to your podcast. And I was like, oh,
like, first of all, that wasn't me that shit on it.
Well, yeah, there was that, but it was kind of, it's still weird when people do that to me, because I'm like, I forget people can listen to this.
Right? Yeah,
or that
you're
people
like, this
do.
is out there.
It's like when I see numbers, it's like, well, that's none of my friends.
Really? Yeah, and I had this conversation with a guy that I'm actually going to do a new metal project with. Ooh. Because we have a mutual love and a longing for 1998 to 2001 era new metal, not anything after that. So
it's a very specific era.
It's very specific, and if it goes any more than that, it doesn't count. So anyway, so we were talking about this podcast that I'm doing with you, and he's like, "Oh man," he's like, "What's your favorite Deftones record?" I'm like, "See, I can't answer that." And I said to him, I'm like, there were a significant amount of people that actually love Self-Titled. He's like, what? Like, he just couldn't understand it. But, and again, there's like these two schools of thought. And, yeah. So, and it really and I talked about what we talked about during that podcast and how it really depends on what you were going through at the time. And, for me, it was totally different than what your experience was, and et cetera, et cetera. So I thought it was so interesting how people have either love it or hate it, or, think that Adrenaline is the best record ever, which I'm like, what?
Yeah, no,
what?
No,
I'm sorry. No, you're wrong. I could say that you're wrong.
So before we hop into it, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask how your Kittie reunion 20-year celebration was.
It was very, very surreal, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
It's,
it's like a heavy metal version of like a class reunion, I guess. It would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, because it was everybody, or almost everybody from back in the day. Yeah. From when we were playing, when we were teenagers, some of them showed up. And so it was a real reunion in that sense. And there were a lot of people that I met that I've never met before. So I felt like it was very much like the original lineup was not much of a focus as sort of their present lineup, and all the people I knew pretty much nobody. I'm like, okay, I don't know who you are. Hello. Hello, how are you? And they're like, yeah, I've been, doing stuff with them for, 10 years or something like that. I'm like, that's insane. That's crazy. Cause I predate that. Like, I predate your time with them, which made me feel A, old, and B, very strange. And right. I'm not sure if it was in a good or bad way. I'm like, man, I'm so OG that there are the beginning of the OG aspect of that band was such like a blip in comparison to what they've done afterwards.
Right.
I had never listened to their music afterwards, after I left, and I was fucking blown away. I was like, holy shit, you guys are awesome. You guys' music is really good. I mean, I'm not saying that, it's just because I had never heard it before, but it was so intense. And seeing them live was, I even said to Morgan afterwards, I'm like, dude, you guys are fucking awesome. Like, really awesome. Everything, like the whole show, and you guys were amazingly tight, and it was great. Very, very good. She's like, thanks. So it was very odd, because I'm like, I felt like I was seeing them for the first time, even though I played in a band with them. So it was very weird. But, of course, there were some technical difficulties.
Always.
That were like, oh, fuck, okay. So here it starts. And so it was just one thing after another. I'm like, oh, man, here it goes. This is going to be a fun show. But everything worked out in the end. And I had fun. So that's all that matters.
What was the one kind of standout thing that you remember the most from that evening?
Charlotte, probably. It was always my favorite song to play live, but it was like everybody went ape shit. And I would say probably like 75 to 85% of the people there were all Americans.
Oh, wow.
They had traveled from every point of the U.S. So, and I find that U.S. crowds are a little bit crazier than Canadian, not always.
Sorry.
Yeah, they're like, oh, man, we can't do it, man. Can't do it. But, yeah, they were going bananas. And that was great to see, because I haven't played in front of a crowd that has done that in a really long time, probably since I played with them. So that was nice to see.
So in light of... Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say I played Steph's guitar as a homage, because why not, right?
Right.
Yeah.
was gonna say, in light of bands like Alexis on Fire and fellow Canadians, and 18 Visions as of more recently, and some
Oh,
of these kind of bands, is I guess I'll put it out there. Is there potential to kind of do something like they've all been doing, where if shows present themselves to you ladies to do something like this on like kind of a weekend warrior type of thing? Is that something that like you all would maybe do since this show went so well, or would this be more of a? Sorry, there was a weird noise. Oh. Anyway, so with those kind of bands, basically, like 18 Visions basically has flat out said, like, we're never going to do a full tour. But, like, right now they're in Buffalo
oh,
for the Eats It Christmas show. They have 3 shows in California coming up in February. They, I think, have done, little, like I said, weekend warrior type things when it makes sense for them around their jobs. Is that something collectively, like, with the show doing, is like, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you ladies had to move the show into a bigger room, didn't you?
we did, yeah.
So I mean, obviously,
There was just
sort of demand there, it would seem.
yeah, and again, I think that had a lot to do with the fact that, and I'm not kidding when I say this, there were people from all over the world there, like as far as Australia, as far as like there's an Australian there, German. My friend from Norway flew to come see the show. Like
Wow.
it was incredible. So there's definitely demand for it, and I can only speak for myself because we haven't spoken or talked about it since the show. Aside from, we're still kind of coming off of the high off the one show,
Right.
but I would definitely I wouldn't say no if they asked me.
Well, that would be awesome. I know there's probably a lot of fans stateside and otherwise that would probably, whether it looks like the original band performing or if there was some way for everyone to kind of do a different version of what happened that night. I'm sure just as a whole, an evening with Kittie would be really interesting to see, 20 years later.
Yeah, I think that was the most interesting thing about that night really was that there was multiple incarnations of the band.
Yeah.
And you got to hear, like, maybe you didn't hear Kittie the first time on Spit, you heard them later on, and you never got the taste of what the older stuff maybe was like live.
Right.
So that was very unique experience. And some people that have been more recent fans came up to me afterwards. They're like, "Hey, I didn't hear Spit until 2 years ago," but yeah. And I'm like, "Whoa, okay, that's cool." Yeah, and they're like, "Yeah, it's pretty fucking awesome. I liked it. It was great." I'm like, "Well, thank you."
It'd be interesting to see something like that. 20 years later, I never got to see the original lineup. I think I only saw the band toward the end when it was about done. So, or done in whatever capacity that looks like at that point. Because, I mean, some bands say they're done and then they come back a couple years later and, is a
Yep.
band really ever done?
No, I don't think so.
So,
And even with them now, I saw that they took some pictures. They being Morgan and Mercedes,
yeah.
they took some pictures at the studio that they usually go to. So I think that there's something going on. I don't know,
There you
but
go.
I don't know what. But something's happening.
Speaking of something happening, we
Yeah.
are happening to redo our chat about Diamond Eyes because my computer took a shit on me and I lost the original file. So the plan to have been done with this discussion thing is now being dragged out for at least a couple more months
Yeah.
due to technical issues. As I was saying earlier, full disclosure, I've been stuck in Steve Evans' world, so I'm gonna kind of fly by the seat of my pants and just kind of remember what I can of this record. And since typically we play a song by Deftones anyway, and that always catches the red flag on like YouTube and shit, I'm just gonna go ahead and if I can't remember the song off the top of my head, I'm just gonna play it off my phone for a second and be like, oh yes, that's the one. Because
Yep.
at this point, I've listened to this record in so many different versions, whether it be straight all the way through, shuffle, whatever. So I have different songs sometimes, but memories as far as what they are off the top of my head. But the interesting thing to me about this record was the first one that actually wasn't the first one that didn't have a Terry Date producing it, but I just remember there being a strong sense of hype around this record. Like Rocket Skates was a teaser single, and then eventually became like the promotional single and got everyone really excited. The video for it kind of reminded me of Be Quiet and Drive as far as like playing in a wet underground, freeway, underpass, overpass, whatever the hell those things are called, while still having like sort of sexy imagery of like Chino sitting on a bed with a woman and weird colors, and it just looked really good, and the song was awesome. But then the self-titled track came out as the first single, and just between those two songs, I think honestly, like those are two great examples of like kind of where this album was gonna go before you were able to buy the full record. But I remember there just being an excitement that I hadn't seen from fans in a long time. And I say a long time, like it was like 10 years, but no, I mean, it was a span of about, 2 full records at that point. I mean, basically from White Pony until this, like fans kind of slowly dropped off. So it was interesting to see such a buzz about this band, and a band that's been around for a while at this point. They're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is their 6th record. So 6 records in, and you're still creating a buzz about your band, like almost like you're a brand new. Like that's kind of unheard of to a degree. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you had mentioned previously that this record, when it came out, you're like, I'm kind of back on board. Like I need to get this.
Yep, it sold me, and I can't recall exactly. I think it might have been somebody told me you need to listen to this, because I had rebuffed both self-titled and Saturday Night Wrist. I'm like, nope, not interested for many reasons. And it had nothing to do with them. I still tremendously respected them, and I would listen to everything else but those 2 records. But then when somebody had said to me, you need to give it, like this one is on a whole new level. It's Deftones, but it's refined, but still raw, and it encompasses all the elements of what I love about the Deftones, but just to a new level.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, let's get right into it. I mean, Diamond Eyes. I mean, I think I said on the Saturday Night Wrist record that with Hole in the Earth, like I couldn't think of a better start to a record to really kind of encapsulate like everything that Deftones are. But then here they are, the next record, and I would be remiss if I didn't say like the same fucking thing. Like this is a song that shows everything that the Deftones are capable of, from punishing riffs, crashing drums, like just a groove that everyone locks in on as a band, and Chino coming right over it with vocals that aren't necessarily what you would think of when you hear a song like this musically, but somehow it all fits and it all works together so well. It's a nice push-pull of being like aggressive and soft at the same time. Like they work dynamics so well. To me, this is like basically the quintessential like Deftones song, really.
Definitely. I agree 100%. It's like you said about the dynamics. That is something I'm not sure many bands do very well these days. Excuse me. And the Deftones just do it of course, in their own way, but it's perfectly executed and illustrated in this song. The highs and the lows, the sort of sweeping chorus, but the chorus is still heavy as fuck. Like it's just, and those guitars. Oh, Jesus.
Right.
Excuse me. I have a frog in my throat. Give me a second.
Oh, I've been washing mine down with this delicious beer. That's like my new favorite.
Delicious beer, sorry?
Yeah, it's a local brew called by Elk Brewing, and it's called the PB and Jelly. It's a peanut butter and jelly, like Concord. It's a peanut butter like front flavor, and then the back flavor is like Concord grape flavor. It's
not very sweet.
No, because I mean, like it's a really great balance. Like you get kind of the sort of salty peanut butter flavor up front, and then like the nice kind of sweet flavor at the very end. And it's what is this even? Well, I mean, like as far as like I don't know, this isn't like a.
It's not a porter?
No, I don't think. No, I don't think so. I think I don't know. It's delicious. That's what it is.
Okay, delicious is good. I'm so sorry if I cough a lot, but I think I might be fighting something. So.
Oh, don't worry. I got like the flu thing this past weekend, and then I've been fighting off whatever the hell else is going around. So I'm treating myself this tonight. Damn it.
You do you. So I apologize in advance if you have to cut all this out, but I'm trying my best.
I'm not going to cut it out when it's funny like that.
So, and it just, and I think it was perfect. Diamond Eyes is perfect in the sense that it's the first song that sort of grabs you, like, you know, those old school hooks that they use in theater. Yeah. Like when but in a good way.
Someone needed to come off stage.
Yeah. Someone needed to come off stage. You just pull that hook. But this is a hook that brings you into the greatness that is this record.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to remember. There's like a song with the hook of the song is It Dies Today. That's right. Never mind. There's a song and like part of the line is the hook that brings you or rips right through your chest. And so I was thinking of that for some reason because I always think of the hook coming off the side of a stage to do that. But
so you went there. I went Blues Traveler. Remember
yeah.
Brings you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always have a weird Blues Traveler memory of legitimately when listening to Howard Stern as a kid, going to school with my mom, and them being concerned that they would have to blur out John Popper's nipples because he had gotten the lap band surgery, and they weren't sure if, like, even though he's a dude, because like how much weight he'd lost, like it looked like boobs. So they were like, "Do we have to blur these out or no?" And that's my other Blues Traveler story that I always think of when I hear them.
I'm never gonna think of them the same every time. I'm gonna think of nipples. Why not? There
you go. The road less traveled.
Indeed. The road less blues traveled. Yes.
There it is. The joke that beat it to death. So anyway, any last thoughts on Diamond Eyes or?
It's very difficult for me to actually verbalize how much I love that song. It really is, because I don't think there are any words in the English language that can, describe me when I say like, oh yeah, that's my oh my God, I love this song. I don't know what that sound is, but that's the sound.
Okay.
So yeah.
Going into Royal, I'll let you go ahead and start with that.
Okay, so I think actually this, and I will say this a lot, this song is probably some of my favorite guitar work on this album. And it really illustrates what I love about Steph's guitar playing. We've said this before, I think. There is absolutely nothing super complicated about what he does, but he knows exactly what to do to accent, to not overcomplicate, to not take away from the other guys in the band. He's very, very good at crafting verses that are
vehicles.
They chug along. And it's a really bad word to use because chuggy guitars, but like right. It's driving and it keeps things on point, and he's just so good at that. And it's a tremendous influence on my guitar playing because I'm not a flashy guitar player and I never will be. But it's because I love the way that he plays, because it's so effective. Why play, all over the fretboard when you can play something that is still memorable and still driving and still effective without being flashy? And he's not flashy at all. And I don't mean that as a slight. That's an absolute compliment. And because he knows the correct way to sort of weave it in there. and I think also the song is probably the most old schooly sounding. What I mean by that is sort of adrenaline-y.
I was gonna say how it just kind of starts like literally. It's almost like I'd imagine there was pre-roll to be able to then cut that out to then start the song literally like on the first like second like that.
Right.
That seems
Right.
something that they used to do on like Adrenaline and
Right.
Around the Fur.
Right. So yeah, that's what I mean by that. It's kind of, it has that old school feel to it, and people that are familiar with Adrenaline and Around the Fur maybe would have picked up on that.
Yeah.
But that also, that outro, just, oh God, that sound again.
The scream at the end of Chino's.
It's just, that groove that I was talking about that I think is really missing from a lot of bands these days, it just gets people moving, either headbanging or dancing, or it's just, they've got it. They've
Right.
got whatever, I can't even verbalize what it is, but it's just it in terms yeah.
It's interesting, like, with this song, I feel like I love the kind of playfulness between, I mean, inevitably, this is something that we will probably, if there were shirts made of this discography discussion, you know, they would say things like the dynamics and the push-pull and the way, you know, these things. But, I mean, I think inevitably, unless, like, a band just sucks, like, it's going to be the thing that happens. Like, people are going to be who they are, and the things that work for them are going to be things that they keep going back to time and time again. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. But I think with this, like, I like the verses are, I don't know, they kind of annoy me to a little bit, just because, like, I feel like it's just so, like, on top of it. Like, you don't really ever kind of, to me, feel like you get a moment to hear what is happening. It just happens to you, like, right away. And so sometimes, like, you know, as a fan of, like, listening to everything and dissecting it, it's a little hard sometimes to do that when you have so much, like, kind of fighting for your attention right away.
Mm-hmm.
The chorus, though, I think, like, it's a really strong chorus, and kind of showcases the other thing that Deftones do really well, which is, you know, you kind of have a really aggressive, you know, verse riff kind of into a really saccharine, like, chorus riff that just kind of, like, unfolds kind of out of nowhere. And
Yep.
it's kind of like, you know, like, I guess, like, if there was a metaphor for the Deftones, it would be like a rose, like, as far as, like, imagery, because it's like, you know, they're nice to look at and stuff like that, but, you know, there's the thorns along that kind of add the little bit of attitude and, you know, meanness to it as well. But
Little danger.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's as a whole, like, I've always really liked this song, and I think something that this album does really well over the first, honestly, most of the first half of this record is, like, everything goes really well into the next song, like something that we really hadn't seen since really Adrenaline, I think, is the last, or Around the Fur was the last record really to kind of, like, when one song kind of ends, it sort of tail ends into the next one, whether it be some, like, feedback leading into, like, ringing out going into the next song, or little things like that. But I always really, like I said, the verses and everything, and then, you know, the very end of this song with just kind of that single note riff and Chino's, like, inward screaming thing he does is just always, like, yeah, like, two songs in, like, everything that you like in a Deftones song is pretty much, like, checked off for you there.
Right. Excuse me.
And then we're still back to the obscure Chino lyrics as well.
Oh my
on
gosh.
this one.
Did I make a note about that? No, I didn't. I made notes about every other song having misheard lyrics that make me chuckle every time, like Beat Like a Chunk, that kind of thing. But that's not on this one. But just saying, there's at least 3 or 4 that I laugh at when I heard it again. I'm like, yeah. Anyway.
Command Control. I want to like this song. To me, this is one of those where the riff seems kind of lazy And I feel like when you kind of look at the lyrics, like it just kind of, you're like it feels like kind of a lazy song. Like between, like, I mean, you come right off the gate, you got Diamond Eyes, which is great. You have Royal, which has really interesting dynamics and stuff. And then you get this one, it's just like, and then you're just like, okay, like this is what we're doing. And then you got like just kind of a very generic approach to me to the lyrics. And it isn't until you get to the chorus where I'm like, okay, like now we're getting somewhere. And it's like, you know, and then like kind of like the fun atmospherics that like Frank's putting on with like some of the background samples and so forth, like kind of, create a really interesting mood. But then it just goes back to this like verse riff thing. Like, I don't know, sometimes like I feel like for as great as they can be, like for being very minimal in their approach, sometimes the minimal aspect, instead of coming across as great and like, wow, you did a really good job of not overplaying, to hear it just seems to me where it's like, maybe you could have tried a little harder.
I disagree, actually. I really like the guitar work on this. I think, again, I think that the balance between overplaying and minimalism is good. You know, anything more, I think would have annoyed me. And I think one of the standout things on it is that detuned synth kills me every time. It adds this like grungy evilness to it, basically. Evilness, is that a word? Yeah. Just it's destabilizing, and that's what I love about it. I'm like, oh, that's so awesome. And I don't think you could have done that with the guitar. I think that it was a really good decision to make. Okay, Frank's going to take this. He's going to do it. He's going to make everybody just, you know, make their ears bleed with some really crazy drone synth, and, you know, you're getting attacked by bees kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, toward the, what is it, the bridge where, yeah, because it's the bridge and then it goes back into the verse thing. And it's like, if there was more stuff akin to the bridge throughout the song, I'd be a lot more on board with it. But when you have between the chorus and the bridge, I feel like it's like there's so much cool shit happening that, like I said, it just feels like the verses are just kind of an afterthought, where it's like, okay. Like, how do we get to these cool parts? I don't know. Da-na-na-na. It's like...
But also don't you like the kind of off time? There's something really off-putting about the song, which in a way, but I think in a good way.
I think if you're referring to what I think you're referring to, as far as like just kind of like the weird timing of the riff, like the weird kind of stutter step to it.
Yes, I
feel like by the time when you get to other songs on this record that do that way better.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's kind of my problem. And I mean, that's something I've said on some of the other records, though, too, is like there's an instance where something doesn't work for me, but then there's an instance somewhere else on the record that does exactly the same thing or has something very similar, but it's done right. And when it's done right, you're like, see, like, why couldn't it be like this? Because this is awesome. And that, not so much.
I mean, I can't say that I absolutely love the song or anything. It just... I don't skip it when it comes on. Let's just say that.
Right.
And in terms of sort of breaking it down and trying to dissect what would make it, I don't know. I just kind of let it be. It's whatever it is on its own. And of course, yes, there are going to be other songs that sort of hit the nail on the head. But I wouldn't say that it didn't. It's just, it exists as song number, what is it, song 3?
Yeah.
Song 3.
Yep.
And, you know, it does its thing, and that's fine. Oh my God, what the hell? Sorry, give me a second.
I feel like that was I looked down at my shirt and realized I had sauce on it.
Oh my God, can you see me?
No, but I know that sound because it was like you're looking around to like kind of fulfill your thought, and then you like look down at yourself and like, shit, I have something on me.
Oh no, it looked. I had a little bit of a heart attack there because I thought it was a centipede for a second. I don't want to freak out, so I'm not gonna.
It's actually my eyelash.
Yeah, and it was just a piece of tape. But anyway, I don't know what a tape is doing on me. But at any rate,
See, it would have been better if we were on song 8, because then I could be like, speaking of tape. But no.
Sorry.
It's fine.
I could put it back on and then we could,
No, it's ruined now.
Oh.
I don't really have a clever segue for the next song.
Oh,
I was like, oh, this is what Fallon would have done if she would have
went to beauty school.
No, you've seen The Butcher. That's the next song.
Is it?
Yeah, number 4.
Shit, yes, sorry, I mixed them up.
That's fine. So you've seen The Butcher. I did the last one, so this is you.
Okay. Okay, you know what? I hope I didn't get these mixed up.
You've seen The Butcher?
Anyway.
Okay.
Is that song, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so one thing I never noticed, because the first time, or the last time we did this, I listened to it on speakers.
Right.
This time we listened to it in headphones.
Yeah.
And I love how you can hear the hum of his amp panned hard right.
Yes.
I never noticed that before, and I'm like, hey, so I rewound it.
This is a great album for headphones, by the way. Or a good...
What?
Yeah. There's so much nuances. Anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, this album is so well produced, but I just love those raw touches. Like, there's still that homage to their roots of sort of live off the floor kind of atmosphere. I'm not sure what songs they would have done live off the floor on this, but it just has that. There's those. It's polished, but not too polished. Right. And again, that is something we've talked about many times with them. But I think they just do that so well and so effectively. And I I make a little emoji face when he says something that makes me laugh, like "shake my tomb." Yep. And I just think of him as like this, like mummy in a coffin. Yeah. In a sarcophagus, like just laying there, being shaken. Oh God, I'm such a weirdo. But and I mentioned this the last time, I think, as well, about those. There are these again, Frank's contributions of these little nuances, like the gunshot sounds. Yeah. You can really hear in the headphones, and it's such a simple thing, but it gets me every time.
Yeah, this one for me is probably one of the. I mean, shit. Honestly, Diamond Eyes would be one of these two. Like, I mean, I think it'd be easier to just, instead of being like one of my top of the record, it'd probably be a lot easier to be like, this is like not one of my top songs off this record. But this one, there's something very seductive about this song, and is one of those where I love the slow dun, 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 dun. And like then it pauses, like it, and again, like it's that what you're not playing allows what's being played to take more shape. And then I just love, and if you know, and I love watching drum videos of Abe sometimes, like when they post different stuff, or you go on YouTube and fall down the rabbit hole of watching Abe videos, because he plays so tight, but it's also sort of sloppy looking in his approach to how he plays it. And like when you watch him play this, he just plays with like such like precision, like and like, you know, he's like hitting like a tom in between like or like a cymbal hit in between every like hit on his snare, and it just locks in with that guitar riff so well. And it's something where, you know, and then for them to just kind of like they're both playing to the maximum efficiency of what is required out of what they're doing, but it's not flashy, but like there's just like little, like I can just like picture him in my head, like when Abe starts, you know, getting into the groove of the verse riff and just kind of like locking in on it. And it's like everyone, like I do see it all the time. The few times I've seen the band since this record has come out live, a bunch of white people who don't know how to fucking sway or dance to this. And it's always kind of weird because it's like, I mean, the groove's there, like fucking find it. But
how do you not? feel that? Like,
I don't know. I see people do it all the time, and I just don't understand it. But it's one of those, like, with Chino, like, I can always picture him in my head, like, when the song's getting ready to start off, like him hopping up on his little riser and kind of like slowly like putting his like one hand up over like by his head and like singing the song, and like him and Sergio, like I can just see them both in my head, like kind of grooving in on the verse. And it's like, it's just so simple and so sexy, and just like, it's a great song. And then it's like, I love the effect of like Chino kind of pulling away from the microphone while still holding the note, or maybe they're using like a studio effect to just let it keep going. And then it's like, the chorus kind of slow, like, it kind of says like, it's almost one of those things like where they, right. Like where it's like, they take a lyric and almost musically, like Chino's describing what the music is doing. Like he's like, you slow, and it's like, and then the music slowly gets to the chorus, and it's like,
we were talking about there's a name for it.
Oh, is there?
There is a name for that. It's, okay. I listened to a musicologist talk about how some artists are very good at doing that, and it may not be something that they do on purpose. I think it's vocal phrasing or vocal something or other, but there's a term for it. I will look it up and I'll let you know what it is.
Okay. I was going to try to look it up, but...
or you could do that, yeah.
Once my Bluetooth keyboard
has a name. And the musicologist was talking about Justin Timberlake and how he does it in almost every song.
Yeah, you were talking about that. I think it was on the White Pony chat, I believe.
And I think Chino is one of those people that also, well, them as a band, actually, they do it quite often.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to look this vocal phrasing. So I thought vocal phrasing referred to...
No, it's not vocal phrasing. It's something else. It's vocal. It's... Okay, let's collectively Google it. We can cut this out later, right?
Sure. Vocal. Vocal matches music.
Word painting.
Ah. Okay. I don't know. That's what I would have called it, but all right.
Or tone or text painting is the musical technique of writing music that reflects the literal meaning of a song. So, for example, ascending scales would accompany lyrics about going up. Slow, dark music would accompany lyrics about death.
Okay. Interesting.
That kind of thing. And anyway, and this is what this musicologist was talking about, What Goes Around by Justin Timberlake.
Yeah.
You can hear... We're totally going off the page here, but I
love that song, so that's fine.
He's like a really great example of text painting. Goes around, goes around, goes around, comes all the way around. It descends an octave and then returns to the upper octave as if going into a circle. And again, it's something that this musicologist is saying that it's probably completely not intentional, but it is in a way. When the music was being, when the lyrics kind of match up with the music, it depends on which came first, but likely the music came first, and he matched it to kind of go along with that. But I was like, that's brilliant. I love that.
Hold on. Yes. Okay. I've been just pulling up lyrics and then being like, oh yeah, like based on the song. But as I was like looking at them, like I can hear the chorus. I just can't hear I can't remember how the beginning of the song goes. Yeah. So for those who would have heard that was Beauty School, which is the next song we're on. What's really crazy is like the Deftones did a really great job of accompanying strong visuals for their videos on this record. And this was nothing more than just a tour video. Following the band, some behind the scenes stuff, them playing, very reminiscent sort of like, how the, what was the song off of White Pony? The one with all the blurred shit that I made the comment about how I never understood because of clearances is why they had all the posters that were blurred out.
What?
Digital Bath.
Ah.
Yeah, in the video for that, they couldn't get clearances for all the posters, obviously. So in some versions of the video, everything was blurred out when they're jamming in the room, and Abe's playing on like the little kids kit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like how that shows like different footage of them playing on the White Pony tour, or on the tours they had been on at that point. This is like a really shot like nice 4K, like really bright like nice colors and stuff like that video, and I think it really kind of adds a nice visual accompaniment to this song, because the thing I always kind of liked about it was like very much like how You've Seen the Butcher is, it has a nice gradual slow build into the verses and stuff. This sets a really interesting tone with Frank providing kind of like I don't even know what it is. It's some kind of like probably like a string patch or something that he's using, but to then have it go over a very interestingly sounding clean guitar tone, which is something that you don't see a whole lot of on Deftones stuff. It just creates a really interesting, like, it's not, and maybe The Cure is the wrong band, but it reminds me of something that like almost akin to Just Like Heaven, like how, like that song starts off with like the like, and it kind of just starts and it kind of creates a really interesting vibe. Like this is almost like a Deftones take on a Cure song to me, like as far as creating that kind of very slow, trancy, almost kind of dancey vibe. Mm-hmm. But I can't really recall any other time where they've done something like this. And so for that alone, like this song really has always stood out to me, because like just some of the dynamics they're using within this song are kind of new territory for the band, and I really enjoy it. And again, Chino's vocals are just so on point on this song, and the chorus, like this is just an album full of really, really strong choruses. Like I don't know if the band sat down and just was like, let's
just
really write strong choruses, or like let's really work on these songs until they can be the best that they can be, because this feels like a band that knows these songs inside and out, did the pre-pro job, like of making sure everything was in its, because everything just sounds like it's in, even though I've already made comment about some stuff not working for me, but everything, there's nothing that feels like it should or shouldn't be there per se. It feels like everything was intentionally put where it is, even down to the overdubs and all that kind of stuff. So this is like something on this record where I feel like the band has taken everything that they've learned from the grandiose things of what they did on White Pony, like the big step they took from Around the Fur to White Pony, to then even, I mean, Saturday Night Wrist took a lot of interesting twists and turns that I think are paying off on this record. The things that people didn't like though on those songs on that record, I'm not one of them, but like for people who were like, well, it was too weird with some of the sampling and such, I think on this, people were like, oh, I love the samples on this. I love the different things they were doing. And it's like, well, even though I saw what they were doing and I enjoyed what they were doing on Saturday Night Wrist, I think this is the payoff for everybody else who did not. And a lot of the stuff that was going on, even as far back as the self-titled on stuff like Minerva, I think those songs and those experimentations, it's a song like Beauty School that is the reward of kind of following them through the different transitions of trying to figure out how to do these different things.
Well, yeah, effectively.
And by the way, again, all of this is just straight off the top of my head. I have nothing written.
Good job.
So this is going to be a lot of rambling like that.
Okay. I really have nothing to add to what you just said, because that's essentially, from what I remember anyways, that was what we were talking about, how it's a new sort of take on, or not a new, but there have been hints previously to what Beauty School, they were going in that direction, in a good direction, different direction, but definitely agree with you on the guitar work. It's very, very different, but not. It's familiar, but it's a slight twist, change in a good way. I always have to make sure that I say that. I'm like, it's a good thing that I'm saying this. I'm not saying that it's shitty.
Right.
It's just, it's different. And for some people that might be a little bit too much of a departure.
Right.
But to me, it's perfect. And really, like I said, I don't have much to add, but it makes me laugh every time he says, when you take off your face.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just get the mental picture just just somebody removing their face, and
Well, I mean,
then,
I know like my wife and several women I know like make the joke like, oh, I gotta put on a face or take my face off like at the end of a night. So
which is kind of fucked, actually. Like, really? Say that's so weird. Like we're putting on someone else's face. Like, I've seen too many serial killer movies where people actually put like skin masks on.
Right.
So like, are we putting skin masks on? Is that what this is really?
Well, as long as you don't have a belt made out of nipples.
Yeah, we definitely don't have that. And I don't have a lampshade made out of skin or whatever. Well, so I think I'm good. And then watch you tasty, which is not what he's saying.
I forgot about that.
Watch you tasty, and I'm just thinking like tasty from like
Orange is the New Black.
Like, oh, you watching me?
He was ahead of that before. He knew it was going to be a sweet show.
Oh, he knew it. I mean, I've always said Chino's been ahead of his time.
Going on to Prince. This one's you. Lemon face, sad face.
It's a sad face. That little, I put, this is my actual notes verbatim. That little wee-oo is so new metal-y. I don't know what wee-oo means. Like the little...
Are you talking about like the hitting of the headstock strings?
Yeah, it's like...
Because that's the only thing I can think of that makes that noise. Yeah.
You know what? It's like a corn kind of sound to me. Yeah. But I love it because it's this... probably not intentional at all, but it just reminds me of something that Korn would have done in like 1994. So, or maybe 96, let's say.
Right.
But I have nothing to say about the song really, because it is one of the few songs that I don't pay attention to when it's on.
That guitar noise, if that is what it is, kind of has always annoyed me. What's interesting is I'm like when I saw them, I think about a month after this album came out, I saw them and they played. There's 11 songs off this record. I think they played 7 or 8 of these songs. So I saw most of this live.
Oh, you played the song?
I feel like they did because I think the thing I remember is that Sergio on this I think is playing like a that weird like bass that looks like a guitar. Because he's kind of playing like that like weird. I mean, if you listen to the bass on this, it doesn't quite sound like a normal bass.
You're right, it doesn't.
And I'm thinking this is the. And I think even when I saw him the first time on this last album cycle, like when the album first came out for Gore, I feel like it's the second time I've seen Sergio with that weird like 6-string bass thing that's like almost got like it is a bass, but it looks like a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he rolled out with that a lot more on the newer stuff because he pulled it out a couple of times. Like they played like 2 or 3 songs with him using that, if I'm not mistaken. So I have a memory of this song. I mean, I've always liked the chorus of this. I think it kind of does very much what You've Seen the Butcher kind of does with that like kind of rolling in chorus. But yeah, I think as a whole, this one kind of is kind of a miss for me as well. Like I don't skip it. And there are parts about it I do really enjoy, but I mean, there's so many other songs on this record that are so good upon like when you hear it the first time. This one was one that kind of grew on me a little bit. So, I mean, you said you listened to it 3 times before we started doing this, and apparently it's not the grower for you.
No, it is not a grower or a shower. It is just what it is. I listen to it, but I don't pay attention to it. Right. I don't play the drums along to it. Generally, this is a drum-heavy song. Sorry, air drum-heavy record for me.
Right.
I'm an aspiring drummer. I've always wanted to be a drummer, but never happened. So I don't know why. It's just one of those. It's the only song I don't air drum to.
Yeah, makes sense. Then there's a lot of like hi-hat work on this, so it's kind of hard to like do all of that. Because some song, like I mean, as much as I like doing like air drums to Everlong by Foo Fighters, that's a very hi-hat to snare kick drum like thing that you're like gonna wear out your fingers real quickly on that one. And I can see like this one because there's a lot of like the picking up on the hi-hat to kind of open it and close it. Like there's just a lot of little nuance to it that would make air drumming very hard and frustrating. Speaking of a fucking bangers, if you're gonna be a drummer, Rocket Skates. This motherfucker just erupts out of the fucking gates. As I said, this was the promotional single, and I remember just the like they just would loop that. I think to the first like hit of the cymbals on it, and that was like the teaser for the song for at least like 2 weeks. And I would probably, for the 2 weeks, at least once a day, would go to their website and just listen to that teaser and just be like, "Oh my god, oh my god!"
See, that's the noise that I was talking about. It's like, it's so good. You can't verbalize. You turn into like a reptile.
And
like reptilian brain comes right in, and no intelligent thoughts.
This is just one of those that it's like it's disgustingly simple, like the arrangement of this whole song, but it's just got an energy that like is undeniable. And like when you see it live, like every time, especially on this record, I saw them on this record cycle twice, and both times they started with this song. I think the last handful of times I've seen them, this is usually the set opener, or the opener to the set, and this is just a motherfucker to like this could have been the intro to the album, and I would have been totally fine with that as well. Like this to me, like Jesus Christ, this riff, the fucking drums, like the cool, like I mean when you see it live, Frank's like siren-y thing is like way too fucking loud. But I mean this song is just, it's one that like there are some songs when you hear it's almost like we were driving home the other day and My Own Summer came on, and I was just like, fuck, like this riff still just gets me excited. Like this song still gets me excited every fucking time I hear it. It's almost like I'm gonna go to the bar as soon as we're done with this. I'm probably gonna play this on the jukebox because the bar I go to is like a dive bar that plays really loud like jukebox music, and they don't mind like metal and shit. So I'm probably gonna go to the bar and drop $1 or something in and just fucking crank this motherfucker on and just air drum the shit out of this. And drink PBR lights, but
see, I get made fun of because I drink PBR. That is one of my.
Well, I said PBR light. That's something a lot of people apparently don't even know. I
didn't even know that exists.
Exactly.
Okay. So, but I know they also have a strong version. I saw that in the liquor store here. I'm like, hey, they have a strong version of PBR. Nice.
But yeah, so this is like strong album, like. Best song on the record to me, like right out. It always has been. This is like one I always get amped on. And when anyone is like, "Oh, it's one of your favorite Deftones songs," this is probably one of them. Like the lyrics are just fucking ridiculously sexy over this like aggressive song. It's almost like I don't know. Like Chino just finds a way to like take something that should be like where you would expect just the most aggressive shit, and instead it's like really soft and like kind of really like it's like. I don't even know how to put it sometimes. It's just like, it's almost like, are you hitting on me? I mean, I don't mind if you are. Like, you're saying some weird fucked up shit. And I'm okay with that. Like, just whatever. I'll sit here and let you keep talking.
That's, I feel that about every song that man sings. So I hear you, but like, maybe not so much of this song for me. But
I love this song so much. There's an artist that this band works with, Jermaine Rogers. He did a poster.
Right.
Yeah,
poster. Yeah,
he did a poster, and basically it is Chino with a bunch of knives and razors and shit, and he's like a skeleton version of himself. And then it has a razor blade, and then it says basically Deftones, and then it says "fuck with me," and it is like when I saw it, I was like, that is like the coolest representation of like lyrics to an image like I think I've ever seen. And then I found down the rabbit hole of that dude's like poster art for shows because he works with a lot of bands, and I was like, never mind, that's what this dude just fucking inherently knows how to do. So
yeah, he's really good at that. Yeah, I checked him out after we talked about him last time.
Yeah, I mean, collectively, I think I'm not like my friends who literally seemingly get a new piece by him like every week. But
Oh,
like
shit.
I have like when we went to Austin, where one of his like he's around the Austin area, and this gallery gets like all of his work basically. I know my wife and I dropped almost $300 just for 2 posters,
Oh my god.
and one of them was a Deftones poster.
I'm sad that I got rid of all my Deftones posters.
You can buy back your youth. I have learned that.
I hope that'll happen. The only poster that I've kept is a Rammstein one that is rolled up somewhere, a KMFDM Godlike one, which does not exist anymore, so thank God I kept it, and then a Slipknot one, which has our name on the bottom. It was hand painted by some French dude, and I kept it, and those are the only 3 posters I have. So I'm hoping I need to I need to rebuy my youth. You're right.
I think that's what I've been doing with my vinyl.
Yeah.
I just got my Papa Roach and Limp Bizkit records.
Nice.
So now Kittie needs to come out with Spit. I don't know. I'm pretty sure the label that you guys had doesn't exist anymore. Artemis. I think it's long been gone.
No, they're long gone as far as I know.
Hey, then maybe you own the rights to that shit now. Maybe the recording contract. No. Well, there's that then, I guess.
There's that then, yeah. I don't know who they're with now. Somebody. But maybe they could do a reprint or something. I don't know.
Put it out on cassette again.
Cassette! Hey, I still have the cassette somewhere.
That was actually that record as a whole was I bought solely based on the cover. I had no idea what it was, and I was like, this, like, in a sea of just kind of bullshit looking CD covers, I was like, what is this? Like, I saw it from afar, and I was like, what is this leopard print thing? And then I was like, is this the band, or is this like a photo of something? Like, I was like, what is this? And I'm like turning it around, I was like, that's like $6. I'll buy this.
Sure. I mean, why not?
And
I love how they like had to accentuate my brownness.
Yeah, I feel like looking back on that, was that like a photo, like a filter thing or a saturation?
And they did that with every photo.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like you appeared either Mexican,
darker than I really am,
black, or like I never could figure out based on photos what you were, because it's like this one you could be black, this one you could be mulatto, this one you could be Indian. I don't know.
And they would always accentuate it. It drove me nuts. I'm like, okay, I understand. I'm one of the very few people of color that are in this scene now. Not so much. But
I feel like the contrast, though, even to Morgan and everybody else, because they made them so pale.
They made them pale, and they don't look like that in real life.
No,
like, what the fuck did they do? That looks so weird. Like, okay. Yeah, 90s, hashtag 90s. Like, what the hell? Anyway, moving on.
I don't know if you had anything to say about Rocket Skates.
Oh, you pretty much hit it on the head there. All I had was, woo, in big letters.
Oh, man, that's like, it's a good song when Chino does a woo. It's like Ric Flair.
True. It's so true. And I wonder if that one was something that they did live off the floor. That can't be something that he would have just done in the vocal booth, I don't think. You know what I mean? Like, he's just surprised. Like, I'm just going to add a woo right here. No, I think they were actually playing it. The energy was there, and they were fucking slaying, and then he's just like, woo!
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And I would, and I do.
And I do every time. I woo along with him.
Sex tape. This one's you.
So I remarked about the water.
Yep.
And I do every time, and I'm sure people are really tired of hearing that, but I think it's...
Hey, what can I say? The Deftones like to get people wet.
Did you see my tweet?
No.
I'll read it when we get to that song. So, anyway, I do, like I said, I do have mutual friends with him. So I should ask them to ask him, can you explain why you talk about water so much?
California.
Like, is it because you're Californian? Like,
I don't know. Isn't that why the Chili Peppers sing so much about California?
Oh, yeah. Maybe. you know what? It could be something as simple as that, or it could just be that he, maybe he's an Aquarius. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah. Anyway, I would love to know. So there's something really familiar about the song, and what I mean by that is just sort of whimsical and making you, when you're like, driving on a highway, something, looking at the like world passing you by kind of deal.
Right.
Something just kind of nostalgic about the song, and I can't quite put my finger on it. There are a few songs that happens to me with, and this is one of them, where I'm just like, it just makes me feel good. It's just it's a nice feeling, and I get that also with Judith by A Perfect Circle. I don't know why. It's just like makes me smile. Something about it makes me smile. And I don't know, this is just one of those songs.
This is a song that I've really enjoyed learning because I'm not much for an effect. Sometimes I go through weird phases where I'm like, oh, I need every effect because I want to be able to create different tones and shit. And then sometimes I'm like, fuck that. Like, if I can't just plug into an amp and play like with distortion and like no volume, then I don't need it.
Right.
And this is one that got me to start playing around with like delays and stuff like that. And like when I figured out the right speed for the delay and like the echo and the reverb, like all that shit, and I got it to where it's like when you hit that note, it's like ding, ding, like, and it reverberates the way it's supposed to. I was like, I figured it out. Because it's not like, when you hear shit like this, it's not like it's like, oh, well, here's the obvious like setting for that. Like you have to like dial it in and play around for a little bit to get it figured out. So it was really cool to figure this out on guitar, at least that part of it. And I've always really enjoyed this song. I mean, a lot of the slower stuff that they do on this record, like this is a great example. They just took it in a different direction and did things that they haven't done, really. Like, I mean, you could sit there and say, like, okay, you got a song like Minerva, which plays around with some of the, the trem kind of stuff, like picking and delay and reverb and oversaturation and all that kind of stuff, or even something like Knife Party off of the White Pony. But there's just something that makes this stand out versus everything that they had done that's sort of like this kind of a step on a record. And I don't know how much of it is the fact that, the making of this record, they scrapped a record that they still apparently aren't super proud of in Euros, and with the stuff that was going on with She at the time, and just kind of allowing them to take risks and make the record and songs that they just wanted to make and were passionate about. And I've always enjoyed this song. I've always enjoyed the way it kind of picks up as it's going.
Right.
It sort of reminds me, and this isn't a metal or a rock song at all, but it really reminds me of Nas, like what Nas does in One Mic, where the verses, and this trick isn't done the same way, but basically like it's a song that like picks up as it goes. Like Nas's delivery in the verses to the chorus, it starts off real slow, and then it's slowly like he is adding, like he's going faster with his vocals delivery. Mm-hmm. As the beat ends up going faster into this like kind of thing, and then it slows back down. And the thing that in that song that I really enjoy is going into the bridge and out of the bridge into the last verse, it reverses. So instead it goes faster and then goes back to, or it goes slower and then goes back to being, or it goes faster, goes slower, then goes faster. That's how it goes. Like that's how it goes. So it flips that dynamic. And this song does really great at playing off of that kind of slow picking up around like the time of the One Last Ride thing, like where he's like Chino's like kind of strumming that like one, I mean basically it's only like a 2-note chord phrasing that he's playing, and then he's just kind of adding like little like minor notes underneath. But it's one of those things where this song's so simple, but it does so much
well. Yeah,
and it like has a lot of swells to it. Like it just kind of washes over you. It reminds me of like a wine drunk, as it were. Like when you get drunk on wine, it just kind of slowly washes over, and you're like, I feel great.
This is great. I'm drinking wine right now. So,
so it's one of those that this song I've always really enjoyed. And there's a band out of Boston, Bad Rabbits, and they do a cover of this song, and it is phenomenal. There's like a slightly different, because it's a live recording of them jamming in their practice space, but it somehow. It's a way raw sounding version of this song. And so as a result, it feels more vulnerable than this song even manages to be. And I think this is a pretty vulnerable sounding song on its own.
It is.
So, for those who have heard me champion Bad Rabbits in the past, check out that cover. There was a cover series. It was Sex Tape, Human Nature, which is probably my favorite Michael Jackson song ever. And they do a phenomenal full band version of that. And they did 1979 by Smashing Pumpkins, which is really good. And I think I prefer it over the original, actually.
Really? Wow, that's high praise.
I'm not the hugest Smashing Pumpkin fans, though, to be fair, but I do really like that song and a lot of the things that are happening in it. But I think the little nuances of like chord progressions and such, I think Bad Rabbit's song, because of kind of how, like literally on the floor it is recorded, you're able to kind of pick out a little bit more of the nuances as opposed to like more of the overproduction sometimes of Smashing Pumpkins songs, even in their simple arrangements.
Right.
But that's some extra homework for those who want to find
Be real, like
yeah,
Deftones.
yeah, cinephile of sort, audiophiles.
Audiophiles need to hear everything ever covered or done, but for Deftones.
I mean, there's not a whole lot of Deftones covers though. I mean, surprisingly, so like
that's true.
That's why, like when I found that cover a long time ago, I was like, wow, this is like, hey, like it's surprisingly really good. And the dude, the vocalist, he's got such a great voice. And I mean, like I just mentioned, Billy Corgan, Chino Marino, and Michael Jackson. Like those are not easy artists to cover in any way, stretch of the imagination. And the dude just fucking kills it. So I've always had tremendous respect for that band, and the band is just phenomenally good. I don't think anyone could ever sit there and be like, oh, this band's okay. It's almost like the Roots. If you tell me the Roots are just an okay band, I'm gonna pretty much like question your credibility as far as like what you consider good musicians.
Absolutely, yeah.
But they're to me, they're kind of on par with that. Like I think if you like the Roots for all that they can do and what they bring to different styles of music, like then Bad Rabbits is a band that you should love.
Okay. Well,
I'll send you a link to the cover when we're done with this.
That's
so
very eclectic mix.
Yes. So next up is Risk. I love, again, we're kind of going back to like this is the song to me, like when we talk about Command Control, like that push pull riff.
Mm-hmm.
This song does that, but does it so right. Like everything about like the riff in this works, and the lyrics really work with the riff. And to me, like just the vocal phrasing and so forth, like it works on this song so well, but on Command Control, like it just didn't to me. And like I was saying, like how there's an example of this style, like this songwriting style, but it's done better somewhere else on this record. Here it is, like to me. And
oh my god.
I've always loved the chorus to this. Just the way that the vocal like kind of floats out toward the end of like the I'll Find a Way. Like there's just so much. Again, there's just so much nuance to this, and there's the production on this song, especially. So many like little like the vocal swells kind of that are embellishing what Frank's doing behind it. Like there's just so many little things like that, especially when you got a good pair of headphones on, you can hear these things and you're just like, oh my god, this is like orgasmic how great the like production is on like you know, it's funny, like in, you know, I was talking with Steve Evans yesterday, who's like a fucking great producer, but to be fair, it's like I say these things like, you know, I pay attention to like little production tricks and like, oh, the mix on this is great, or you know, so on and so forth. And but I mean, really, like I have no fucking clue what causes any of these things. It's just an observer and observing of these things and like these little studio tricks and so forth. And it's like there's just so much cool shit that's happening like on this song. And it's something, like I said, like I'm not saying Terry Date's a bad producer, but no, I don't think we would have ever gotten this record with him on the boards. I just don't think he, and sadly I don't think the band were just at a place where they knew to do all of this shit. Maybe it's a thing of technology, like with Frank having newer technology that makes it easier for him to do these things, to add these layers. Because you go from what he had been doing previous, and it sounded like it was just more samples, whereas this is a lot more keys and synthesizers and touchpads and playing around with sound. And I don't know that he always was into those kind of things, or if he got into those things as these records progressed and it just became something he was adding to the band. But I mean, Frank does so much cool shit on this record, and through a nice pair of headphones you can really kind of just take it all in. And I think I can never pronounce this dude's name, but Nick Rest something or other, he came from Sound City. Like, he's been producing for so fucking long and has worked with great bands and has been around like some of the best recording technology as far as like getting in there and learning, like doing stuff like that, like records that had feel and little things that kept bringing you back. And this record, I gotta feel like it's because of him that like this record is what it is and has all these little things too. Like, you would give the producer some love on this one, because like he does so much cool shit on this record.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just going to read what I tweeted like about an hour ago. Because like I said, before we started talking, I listened to this record 3 times. And really what I meant by that is I listened to Risk 3 times or 4 times, maybe 5 times. I'm not sure. So I tweeted, so how many babies were conceived to Risk at Deftones? There should be many babies conceived to the song. Many. And then I put a gif of Evan and Rachel Wood, like sort of seductively looking at the camera, like, because it is such a fucking sexy song. Like, there's just nothing. And somebody tweeted afterwards, like, oh, I thought that A Change in the House of Flies is their sexy song. I'm like, no, it is. But this one, like you said, has so much going on in it, all at the perfect level. Yeah. So much groove, so much sensuality. I mouth breathe through the entire song. Like, it's it's just so amazing. There's absolutely nothing that's out of place, in my opinion. Probably, no, it is one of my top 4 favorite songs by them ever.
It is really good.
Yeah.
That's pretty much an understatement, though.
I know, it is really good, but there are no words.
No.
Yeah.
So I know when we talked about this last time, I ended up finding out that this was the name of a horror movie.
976 Evil?
Yep. Because we were trying to figure out like what it was, but it was a horror movie from, I think it was the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember it was like, oh, if you dial this number, like, it was like a direct connect to hell, I believe, is what I remember the synopsis being for the movie.
Oh, that's great.
So, fun fact, since we're on this 967 Evil and we're past Sex Tape Risk and 967 Evil, so I took what is sort of like the equivalent of like shrooms or something, and it was around the time this record came out, so I was still like, I mean, not that it's not heavy rotation usually, but it's super heavy rotation. Actually, I think it was leading up to the show, so it was within that first like couple of weeks of having the record. And those 3 songs, the way like I was saying, how they flow into one another, like this album does really good at flowing from one song to the next. Like, these 3 songs to me epitomize that to a T. Yeah. When you're on shrooms, though, the way that there's so much little nuance to the songs, like between the swelling and the vocal trickery and all that kind of stuff, like, you want to have a good time and just really be like, wow, this is I feel really good listening to this. Listen to these 3 songs. I'm not advocating, I guess, doing drugs, but I always think about how great these songs make me feel on some kind of weird subconscious level, I guess, when I was tripping on shrooms and just being like, this, I love these songs. They feel great. And I just notice so many little things about it that make me feel good when I hear them. And it's a pleasurable listening experience.
Indeed.
967 Evil, though, I really love the. Okay, I'm gonna say this, even though a pet peeve of mine. I fucking hate the texture of like velour or like satin and shit like that. I fucking can't stand it.
What?
Yeah, I have a weird, like, I think everyone has that like one thing like they hear or feel and it just drives them nuts, gives them like goosebumps and shit, and they can't deal with it. That is it for me. That being said, when this song cuts in and kind of gives that slow drony like little couple of notes played, all I can think of is like a big like crushed velvet, like purple velvet, like curtains and stuff, and it's kind of slowly being opened up to present like something. And maybe this is from my like weird something I've attached.
I was just about to say, was that like part of your mushroom trip?
No, I don't remember ever thinking that, but whenever I hear like when I drive sometimes, like I just think of like something being presented. And I've always said that this should have been the last song on the record. This should have been the album closer. Because to me, like the way those three songs go and the way that this song kind of talks about taking a bow and all that kind of stuff, I just kind of always have felt that this should be the album opener. And in a weird way too, I've always kind of associated this song with almost when sometime. And again, maybe I'm kind of putting a lot on this because of myself having lost two friends around shortly after this record came out. And sometimes when I listen to this record, I almost feel like it's almost like the grieving stages. Like there's kind of like denial, and that can be something like, a rocket skate, something very quick and aggressive and all that kind of stuff, to then, like the denial and so forth. And this is like one where I kind of feel like it's almost like acceptance, like, okay, like I'm okay with like whatever's going to happen now. Like I've come to grips with everything. Like I've gone through this emotional journey. And, I think part of that is also me as a listener thinking about all of that was going on with Chi at the time. Like you don't know if he was going to make it. Like he couldn't, you don't know. And I imagine as a band that's weighing heavy on Chino as the vocalist. But there's just this kind of weird sense of coming to grips with everything, like in as much as maybe not necessarily lyrically, but just kind of the finality musically that this song kind of has to me. And I've always kind of like, like I said, it's like, all right, like kind of like if there was a way to summarize what I'm trying to say in like a saying, it would be like, what will be, will be. That's kind of like what I think of this song. And it's always been one where I always get kind of sad when I hear it, because it's like, oh, like this is the end of the record. And it's a very reflective song as a whole to me. And this has always been one of my like absolute favorites on this record as well. But it's unlike, a Diamond Eyes or a Rocket Skates. Like it's completely for a different reason, a different vibe than those songs have. And I don't feel like people like this song, actually. Like when I talk to people about this, they're like, oh, yeah, I can kind of leave that one.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. I 100% agree with you on that one. And first of all, just production-wise or just like songwriting-wise, the chorus on this, I think, is probably one of the biggest sounding.
Yeah.
It's just so, without it being offensive, just sonically is probably one of the best that I've heard ever. It's just, there's something about it when you hear it again on headphones as opposed to, through speakers or whatnot, is so, again, I'm without words. It's difficult to put into words how much I love some of these songs. This is definitely one of my top three on this record. So that's what we have in common, I suppose. But really, that was one of my comments on it, was just how epic it sounds. It's just so great. And the dynamics are just it's just so perfectly done. And I know I just keep saying that to death, but again, it's very difficult for me to verbalize how much I love this band. It's really hard. Yeah. But again, it's interesting that you mentioned how the song has that finality to it for whatever Chino and the band was going through, but it also has a lot of meaning for you as well. And aside from the whole drug trip thing, which I think, or the curtains thing, which I think is, I don't know, you talking about that just made me think of Blue Velvet for some reason. And like,
the movie or
the movie, just like Isabella Rossellini just standing there singing this song. Like somebody should have done that. And I don't know. Anyway, so I think it's so interesting how it has that. Every time you hear that song now, it has an instant emotional connection for you. And isn't music great that way, that it has, every time you hear it, that'll instantly bring you back to that time in your life. And yeah, the Deftones do that to me all the time. But yeah.
The interesting thing is you almost would have figured with the song title coming up, which is This Place Is Death. I feel like the song title should have maybe like flip-flopped, because I feel like that's a more fitting song title for the feeling that the other song gives me. But this one's you, actually.
Oh, you know what? I just wrote the name and I didn't write a note for it.
All right.
I think it's because you called
right when you were writing your notes. I can give you, unless you can remember, I can kind of give you my.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Very much like how I said on Saturday Night Wrist. Actually, I think I said it on Self-Titled as well. This isn't a bad song. I just don't think this isn't a good album closer. It's out of place. Like I said, there's such a finality, and the way that Sex Tape, Risk, and 967 Evil flow into one another. To me, the way 967 Evil is and very much ends, like the song itself ends. That's it. That's the record. And I don't know if. And sometimes when playing this album on shuffle, like when this song comes in, like it's all right. Like I feel like it's one of those where maybe you need to have 11 songs, or it needs to be this length or whatever. And it's nothing against this song. Like, I mean, if I had to pick between this and Command Control, I would rather not have Command Control between the two.
Really?
But the thing that I just feel like this song kind of just drifts too long at times. Like, it's like, probably could do, like, probably chop 30 seconds off of this. I don't know. This is just a really weird, out of place song, and I think it's even more so. It's the only thing that just popped in my head is like, it's like someone with like 6 fingers. You're like, what's that one for? Like, it's not needed. Like, you can cut it off and your hand would be fine. Like, you don't need 6 fingers. And so, like, I don't know. That's the only analogy I can come up with for this. Is like, I'm just like, yeah, it's like the 6th finger of this album. It's like, hey, if you chop it off, like, your hand's still fine. You got all your fingers. But I mean, if you leave it there, it's like, well, what is this? It's weird.
I mean, you could also chop off. You really could survive with only 3, so long as you had an opposable thumb, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess.
But definitely, I got the same feeling now that you talk about it. I'm remembering the lyrics to it and like just the song itself. Yeah. Again, I treat it the same as I treat Prince. It's just one of those, not the artist, the song. The artist formerly known as Prince and Prince. So it's just one of those things that I don't really pay attention to, but I don't skip it. It's just there. It exists. It's part of the narrative of this entire record, but it's not something that I'm like, oh my God, I need to air drum to this song like right now. It is not one of those. It's not strong as a closer. You're right. And I think there is an argument to be made that yes, it could have ended at 976 Evil for sure, but it has its place in the narrative,
Somewhere.
I think, of this story that is Diamond Eyes and whatever it means to the band. It fits in there somewhere, but maybe not at the end.
Right.
No, I would say maybe. Definitely not at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes when it gets played in the middle, it's all right. It's like a middle. It serves as like almost like a palate cleanser between, you know, some of the other stuff. So where it's like, all right, like when it gets played after like Rocket Skates or something like that, it's like, all right, that works.
Time to take a break, you know?
Yeah.
If you're playing the record at a club.
Yeah, this would be where everyone goes and gets beers and goes to the bathroom.
Exactly. Yeah. I would say Prince, for me anyways, Prince and this song would be the ones that I would sit down for.
Okay.
I'd sit down and like enjoy my drink or something. But then the other songs
I would stand up for and be excited.
Stand up for and be excited. I would necessarily air drum in a club, or a bar or whatever. But
Live a little.
Live a little, you know, dance around. Whatever Risk would make me do, who knows? Yeah.
So, there are bonus tracks. They're basically all covers, which is something the Deftones are synonymous for. For every record, they usually do at least a cover. I'm not really going to talk about them just because most people don't even know they exist, and assume that they're basically from the covers record that ended up coming out after this record. And some of these were, I think, they couldn't have been on the B-sides and rarities because that was before this record. So yeah, the covers record that came out for Record Store Day that they said they never would release, and now it's on iTunes and a few other places, and makes me mad because, I mean, I have it on vinyl, and that was one of the only reasons I would have bought it regardless, but when you tell me like it's going to be the only version that like is the only way to hear these songs, and then it's like, no, we put it out everywhere else. It's like, motherfuckers. But yeah, there's interesting covers, interesting bands that they covered, like always. Excuse me. And so the fun part of picking a favorite. I mean, there's really not really. I mean, unless you're like, oh, it's Commander Controller, this place is death. I would be like, there's really no way you can pick a not good song. Like if you were like, oh, I mean, you've seen the Butcher, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely, that's a great song. Like, it probably is one of the best ones on the record. Or you could be like, it's Diamond Eyes. I'm like, fuck yeah, it is. You know, like there's really no wrong answer unless it's Command Controller. This place is death.
Well, I can tell you that it's definitely not those songs.
Right. I think for you, it's probably going to be Risk. Would probably.
Oh hell yeah, hell yeah, baby, hell yeah. It is. To me, like I said, it is everything that I love about the Deftones in a song. So.
Well, I guess that'll be the song we end the episode out on.
Yay! Everybody go out and make babies to that song.
I mean, unless you can't financially pay for that baby, then please don't. I know you have free healthcare in Canada, but we do not.
No, you don't.
So we can look forward to going through the album. Literally, the thread of the emails I've been sending to Fallon are saying the album that I can never pronounce correctly. I don't know why I can never get it right. It's Koyo no Yokan. Yeah. Yep.
It's Japanese or something.
Yeah, but I think I've read that it doesn't even translate to anything.
Oh, wonderful. So you just take a whole bunch of Japanese words and...
Yep.
Okay.
So even more fuck you listeners. Like, oh, you thought it meant something? No.
Good job, Deftones. But really, this record, there are some really great standout tracks on that. Standout tracks that I am so excited to talk about. So, yeah.
On the next record?
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna have to really go back and listen to it. To be completely honest, like I listened to it when I got that record because I was this uber nerd and pre-ordered it the day it came out to get one of those like super limited like not hand number but numbered all that shit, and I got a really low number, and really excited, and I listened to it quite a bit. And then I think there was just other shit that came out slightly after I kind of had seen that record, them on that record cycle, and was like, I'm good. And now I will say Gore is going to be an interesting one because I got that on vinyl. I listened to it when I got it because I waited until I literally received the record to listen to the album as a whole. So I didn't listen to any of the singles when they put out songs, the one or two that they did. All the negative feedback I was reading, I was like, I hope it's not this bad. And I listened to it a bunch when we were in Portland with our friends who are super Deftones fans as well. And it kind of grew on me, but I feel like that I'm going to really have to sit down with this one because I think it's going to be one where I go, I see what they're doing, but it's just a very record to me. And that's just like how I feel about it now, having not really sat down with it like between my ears and really just kind of like, you know, being at work for 8 hours and just playing the record over and over and over again and getting to really know it. So maybe that my opinion will change on these next two records. Because as of now, I would say like they're kind of in the middle of the whole discography for me at this point.
Right. You know, it's the peaks and valleys of Deftones. We've talked about this.
Yeah. See, to me, like
You know?
there wasn't really a valley for me at this point. We had already surpassed the valley. So
well, there have been some valleys. For me, there's been valleys.
For you.
And then there was that peak. And so now, like, I think Koi no Yokan is actually quite good in its own right. I haven't listened to Gore as much as I should have, I think. And I have listened to it maybe 2-3 times before, just because I thought that on the show that I saw them on in the summer, I thought they would be playing more from the new record, which they did not at all.
Yeah, they really don't.
So they played like Swerve City off of Koi no Yokan.
And I think they played. I think they played Leathers and Tempest.
Yes.
I thought.
Yes.
Yeah.
They played Leathers for sure. And I'm like, I don't know what any of these songs are, but I love the ones that they did play.
Yep.
But anyway, so I listened to it enough times that I could recognize it at the show.
Okay. Well, I think this will be fun for us because we've gone through these next two will be interesting because we've gone through our favorites, you know, where we were as fans and so forth, and now we're kind of coming to records that neither of us have like listened to death. So it'll be interesting to kind of approach these more or less with new ears, kind of.
Indeed. Yeah. I agree. It'll be good.
Well, until next time, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your wine.
It's already done.
Oh.
I don't drink a lot of it at a time. Just because I'm starting to get sick, so maybe I shouldn't be drinking at all. But anyway.
That's no fun.
Anyways, you enjoy your evening as well, and your peanut butter PBJ whatever we don't know, and enjoy your evening at the play My Own Summer, and then play what else? How many songs do you get for $1?
Oh, not many. Like one, it's an internet jukebox. But usually, if you use your phone, here's a pro tip. Use your phone. You usually can skip anyone who's going in and feeding money. And you also get to earn extra credits for free for doing that. And sometimes, oddly enough, the phone will have way more of a selection than the actual jukebox will. Like, there have been times I'll go and be like, for instance, if I were to go up to the jukebox and be like, Kittie. And if I was at the machine, it would say nothing. But then if I go on my phone, it might have a Kittie song. So it's like, okay, that's weird. So sometimes you're using your phone is a lot better. Plus, it makes people get pissed when they're like, I put $20 in this motherfucker. And you're like, yeah, I used my phone and didn't get up. And my credits go a little bit further. Like, you get more credits for your money on your phone, I think. And, if I spend $10, usually I'll get at least, an extra couple of credits through playing those, because you get tiers, if you play 20 songs you get an extra credit or 2, and you play 30 songs or 40 songs you get 5 credits and shit like that. Okay. So it's that's a pro tip if you go and spend money on jukeboxes. Just fucking download the two touch tunes and AMI and
touch tunes and AMI. Okay,
and enjoy that.
So yeah, definitely do My Own Summer for me.
Okay. And then I will probably just do it on Twitter. And so anyone following Fallon or myself on Twitter, She's at Fallon Bowman. I'm just at Johnson Title Pod. I will be sharing the Bad Rabbits, and I'll tag them too. So if you like them, you can follow them on that. But I'll share the Bad Rabbits cover of Sex Tape. It is really good.
Sweet. Awesome.
Awesome. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.
So that was my chat with Fallon Bowman. Interestingly enough, as I was slightly editing some of the stuff out of this episode and for time's sake and all that, I noticed that Fallon actually had gone to the thing I put on Twitter, posting the Bad Rabbits cover of Sex Tape, and wrote that she thought it was perfect with a GIF. And I don't know. I think it's a phenomenal cover. So do yourself a favor. Go to YouTube. Go check out Bad Rabbits cover of Sex Tape. It's actually like an in their practice space, full on like video with like probably like a sound mix or a soundboard mix of them playing, or maybe it's just everything's mic'd and it's a live room recording. But regardless, it sounds fucking phenomenal. Easily one of the best songs off of the Diamond Eyes album. And hearing someone do it, like I said, you don't typically hear Deftones covers. And sometimes when you do, you just kind of realize, like, how good the fucking Deftones actually are all on their own. So it makes you just really appreciate when you hear a good Deftones cover. Interestingly enough, I'm sure I'll probably end up talking about this when I talk to Shield in a few weeks or so, but there is actually a song of Chino doing a song with Bad Rabbits. There's footage online. You can't hear any of the actual vocals or music or anything. It's just like there's a song playing over like a montage of them in the studio. But it's a song that Teddy Riley of Blackstreet and kind of just a lot of that early 90s like New Jack Swing kind of style music. But Teddy Riley with Bad Rabbits and Chino Marino all working on a track. Let that fucking sink in for a minute. If that doesn't get you excited to check out Bad Rabbits, if you're not a fan of theirs already, then I don't know what the fuck you even like musically. Because, I mean, we're talking Deftones. We're talking R&B sort of royalty of the early 90s. And we're talking about a band who are fucking phenomenal and can infuse and weave in and out of so many different styles and genres. It's honestly, and I'm not even saying this just to blow smoke up anyone from Bad Rabbits who is listening to this, I would honestly say as a band, as far as like being able to hop in and out of genres and influences, one of the few bands I could think of that I think are on the same level as them, or that Bad Rabbits are on the same level as far as just creative musicianship, would actually be the Roots. I think that's probably like one of the closest comparisons I can actually make to a band that is actually a band that weaves in and out of a lot of different styles and has just so much to offer listeners of so many different kinds. But either way, I'm going to stop sucking Bad Rabbit's dick now. Socials, we're just going to kind of get right into it just because this is a long-winded episode, as it typically is when I talk with Fallon, especially about a record that we have been teasing about talking about for almost a full year at this point. So we finally stopped blue-balling you guys and got right to arguably our favorite Deftones album as a whole. Fallon can be found simply enough at Fallon Bowman on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and if you would like to find her on YouTube, you can find her at Fallon Bowman TV. Also, Moshpit Nation, the partner of this podcast. You can find us at moshpitnation.com. You can find us on Facebook at Moshpit Nation West, capital M, capital I. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Moshpit Nation. Simple enough. If you would like to follow me / the podcast on socials, Facebook.com/Johnson Title Podcast, Twitter at Johnson Title Pod, Instagram at Johnson Title Podcast. You can email me at johnsontitlepod@gmail.com. If you would like to go on YouTube and see some of these conversations I've had over the past year or so, you can do such at Johnson Title Podcast. Search it out. Every way that you find this podcast and listen to it is greatly appreciated. Also greatly appreciated anybody who rates, reviews, and subscribes to the podcast. Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts or whatever the fuck they want to call it now. I see that I've got about 5 ratings, all 5 stars. which is great. Thank you to anyone who has rated the podcast. As I said a couple episodes ago, I got a couple of reviews, very good ones as well. So I would like to keep up the positive feedback. And even if you have feedback that isn't so great, like, hey, shut the fuck up and basically stop doing these intros and outros, or I don't know. Whatever it is, if you, any kind of critique, criticism, feedback, whatever it is greatly appreciated. I mean, you can only get better if you can't get better, I should say, if you don't get feedback at all and know what you are doing that's good and what you're doing that's bad. So without further ado, we end the episodes as we always do with a song. This one is the proverbial best song off of this record. I let Fallon pick them, so this isn't necessarily the song that I think is the best. It is one of my favorites off this record, so without further ado, this is Risk by the Deftones off of Diamond Eyes. Let us know on our socials what you thought of this, if this is the best song or if there's a better one in your opinion. Let us know. Without further ado, Risk by the Deftones. Talk to you next week.
To say to take you high.